Good morning and good morning, Victory Church. Come on, can we stand to our feet all across the room? Amen, amen. If you're ready to worship, let's just sing this out all together. Put our hands together like this. Hey! I'm marching to battle, no doubt in my mind that my God is with me and victory is mine. I'll dance in the shadow of my enemy, 'cause God is my champion, He fights for me. Oh, God is my champion, He fights for me. Say, bigger the battle, greater my faith. There is no giant you cannot slay, 'cause you're stronger than 10,000. Oh, you're stronger than 10,000. We say, oh, 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 oh. No weapon against me will prosper or stand, 'cause I got a promise from the Son of Man. I throw off my armor and raise up my hands, 'cause I know my God and I know who I am. Oh, I know my God, I know who I am. We say, bigger the battle, greater my faith. There is no giant you cannot slay, 'cause you're stronger than 10,000. You're stronger than 10,000. Bigger the battle, say, bigger the battle, greater my faith. There is no giant you cannot slay, 'cause you're stronger than 10,000. You're stronger than 10,000. We sing, oh, 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 hands up, hey. Come on, let's sing this out. Say, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. Tell every giant, get out my way. I'm not afraid. No, I'm not afraid. Tell every giant, get out my way. Say, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. Tell every giant, get out my way. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. Tell every giant, get out my way. Bigger the battle, greater my faith. There is no giant you cannot slay, 'cause you're stronger than 10,000 armies. You're stronger than 10,000. Bigger the battle, say, bigger the battle, greater my faith. There is no giant you cannot slay, 'cause you're stronger than 10,000 You're stronger than 10. Say you're stronger than 10. You're stronger than 10,000 armies. You're stronger than 10,000. Come on, all across the room, if you believe that this morning, that we serve a God that is stronger than any situation, can we just begin to close our eyes and lift up our hands right where we are? And just begin to speak to Him. Say, God, we thank you for your love. We thank you for your grace. Yes, Jesus. So where would we be without you, Jesus? Old things have passed away. Your love has stayed the same. Your constant grace remains the cornerstone. you've done, we will pour out our love. This will be our anthem song. Say, Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. You sing Jesus, say, Jesus, we love you. And oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Come on, let's sing it all together. Sing the hopeless. And the hopeless have found their hope. The orphans now have a home. All that was lost has found its place. So you lift our weary heads. Say, you lift our weary head. You make us strong instead. You took these lives. You made us beautiful. For all that you've done, we will pour out. This will be our anthem song. Say, Jesus, we love you. And oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. And Jesus, we love you. And oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Our hearts adore. Sing, our hearts adore. Our hearts adore. So all we need, Jesus, so pour it out, God. You laid out your feet. Come on, let's declare this all across the room together. We sing our affection, our devotion, poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion, poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion, poured out on the feet
Can you put your hands together and give Jesus praise? Well, you can be seated. We're going to come back and have another song toward the end of the service when we take communion. It's so good to have you. We're going to go ahead and dismiss our middle schoolers right now. You guys can slip out to go and be with Pastor Fernando. How many of you love Jesus with all your heart, mind, soul, strength? That's what we're singing about. Just loving Jesus. That's what you and I are called to do, to love him. And when you love him, you know, a lot of times we think, well, not us necessarily, but a lot of people standing outside of the church, they think, well, you know what church is all about? Church is all about rules and regulations and all of that. But you and I know better than that. We know that really life in God is about a relationship, and that's a relationship with Christ, and we just love him. And Jesus said, if you love me, you will obey what I want you to do. And it's not like it's got to be like real difficult, like you and I are under duress just trying to please Jesus. Jesus just said, hey, if you love me, you'll follow my teachings. You'll do what I want you to do. And I know that's what you and I want to do. It's so good to have you here today. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. Welcome back to the church family. It's good to see our new friends that are with us. And if you're brand new to our church, we want you to feel right at home. We want you to feel welcomed and loved and wanted. And we want you to come back and be with us again and again. If you're brand new to our church, please stop by the big blue tent out front right after the service. I would love to be able to meet you personally. Hey, there's a lot of things you received when you came in. You almost received the communion elements as well, but we're going to hold on to that as well. We decided that we didn't want it to feel like trick or treat, that every time you stop, that somebody is giving you. But you've received a couple of things already, and I want you to just have them handy. Will you do so? You should have a couple of these Easter invite cards. And we have a lot more out of the information table. Just grab a stack and just do everything that you can to get people to be with you 2 weeks from now. You know that we're going to be doing 3 one-hour services. There's all kind of options. We'll do a 1-hour service that starts at 8:45. We'll do another one that starts at 10, and then we'll do our third and final one that will start at 11:15. All of them are 60 minutes long. And just make it easy for the people that you're going to be inviting on Easter Sunday. Make it easy. Let them know you'll meet them in the lobby, because a lot of times when people are new, they're like, I don't know what's going on and where do I sit and what's going to happen. And maybe you'd even meet them in the lobby to make it easier. Hey, I'll hang out in the lobby, wait till you get there. And if you want to, just say, I'll even provide you breakfast. I'm providing you with donuts and coffee this morning. You can do that if you would like. And then bring them into service with you. We know that there's going to be many, 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 many people that will receive Christ as the Savior of their life. We just know that's going to happen. It's just something I believe with all of my heart, and I hope that it will be among those that you bring with you, family members, friends, co-workers, neighbors. But these cards, you have those. Hey, this other card, I want you to go ahead and take out, and I want you to lead you in this exercise real quick, even now. It says Grow Track Super Saturday. We're doing it right here on Saturday morning, April the 30th. It will start at 9 and it will conclude at 10. So here's what I want you to do. Let's just go ahead and take a moment now, and you can register for it even right now. It's one of those times like a couple of weeks ago when I said, listen, take out your phone. Don't always say it, but take out your phone. And you wrote in some great questions, and we had a chance to respond to a lot of those last week. So I'm saying go ahead and take out your phone and go ahead and register now, Grow Track. Grow Track is an opportunity for you to learn a lot about yourself spiritually. It really is the membership pathway of our church. And so a lot of you will be like, hey, Jeff, I come to the church. Do I really have to be a member? And technically, you don't have to be a member, but I hope that you want to become a member. I always look at membership, church membership, sort of like this. How many of you know I love college football? Wave your hand like this if you know. What would you think if somebody said, hey, I want to play college football? I want to play college football. We got some of you that are here that you did that. And I never could make a team. I don't know what the problem was. But it would be like somebody saying, I want to play college football. I just don't want to be on a team. Oh, That doesn't even make sense. We would scoff at that. So I encourage you. I'm going to be here. We're going to start with Chick-fil-A. We'll be serving that. We'll be actually, Super Saturday, actually having right here in this theater. I believe it's going to be in theater number 10. I'm going to be teaching one of the sessions. It's the easiest way to go through Grow Track. So I want you to go ahead, take your phone, and just scan that little QR code. And some point during the next couple of moments, we'll have video announcements. Go ahead and sign up. And if some of you are saying, Jeff, I'm just, I don't want to even mess with trying to do it digitally. Well, there's some of these cards out at the little round table next to the information table. Just stop by there, write your name, your phone number, your email, and then just check that you're going to be here at South Campus. So that will be a great thing. So go ahead and register right now. I hope you'll do it. And there's so many things I could say about Grow Track, what you're going to learn, how you're going to grow, how do you find your place, all these kind of opportunities. If you've had questions about life in our church, Grow Track, I think, will answer most all of them. And so we're going to have some video now. Oh, one more announcement, because I'm just tired of being quiet about it. And that is my grandson is going to be born somewhere around July 2nd. And by the way, his name's going to be Maverick. I'm tired of just having, you can't. So there's my announcement. His name's going to be Maverick right here, right now. And I'll deal with the consequences later if necessary. Now, how many of you know if your name's going to be Maverick, you better be tough? You got to back that up. You got to be tough if your name's going to be Maverick. If you're not tough, they'll take your lunch money, so you got to be tough. So that will be it. Just having some fun. And I did have permission, unless you think I all of a sudden got really courageous. Thank you for continuing to be faithful and giving to God from what God has blessed you with. If you have an income, you've got it because God's blessed you with it. And you're like, but I went to school, but I work hard, but. And how many of you know that God is the one who gives us the ability to be able to do all of those things, to get our education if we went that route, to be able to work hard, to have good health, whatever it was, to work hard for a lot of years. And now maybe it's even in your retirement years, and God has blessed you so that you can continue to draw an income. And however it is that God has blessed you, thank you for being faithful. Hey, let me give you an update. You'll be so pleased to know that I told you we've been partnering with two great organizations with a Ukraine relief effort. One of them is AGWM, which is Assembly of God World Missions, and that's making sure that we've got boots on the ground, missionaries on the ground. And we've got a lot of those right now that have concentrated on that area. The other is through Convoy of Hope. And that is where the supplies, when I've mentioned to you about food and water and baby formula and sleeping bags and all of that, that's what Convoy of Hope is doing. AGWM is really personnel. Convoy of Hope is really the tangible things that the personnel is distributing. You'll be happy to know that we have sent $40,000 at this point, $20,000 to AGWM, $20,000 to Convoy of Hope, and we've only been able to do that because of you. So thank you in advance. And if you're like, man, I want to do something and I intended to do something, but I haven't yet, you can continue to do so. But thank you, whether you're giving online, are you texting to give, or you're giving in the offering envelope at the end of the service. Thank you so very much for doing that. Hey, take a moment now and turn your attention to the screens.
Good morning and welcome to Victory on this first Sunday in April. If you're new, you can stay updated and discover all that's available by filling out our Connect card online at victorylakeland.org/Connect card. Or you can stop by the Guest Central tent as you leave so we can meet you and give you a small gift as a way of saying thank you for being here today. One of the most important and exciting days of the year is just 2 weeks away. Sunday, April 17th is Easter Sunday, and we have a great morning planned for all ages. Your kids will learn the story of Easter through an immersive and interactive teaching experience, and you will be encouraged with a message designed to show how Jesus' resurrection changes everything. Whether your friends and family have never been to church, haven't come in a long time, or are already connected, Easter 2022 will be a fantastic day of celebrating Jesus and the new life that comes because of the resurrection. Take time this week to intentionally invite someone you know who needs the hope and freedom that can only come through knowing Jesus. To make space for everyone, we'll have services at 8:45, 10, and 11:15 a.m. on Easter Sunday, so invite everyone you know to join you. The week after Easter, on Sunday morning, April 24th, we'll celebrate with those who have decided to follow Jesus by being baptized in water. If you'd like to be baptized, reserve your spot by signing up in the foyer as you leave today or online at victorylakeland.org/baptism. Victory offers a wide range of classes and support groups covering practical life issues and spiritual growth. Classes meet throughout the week at our North Lakeland campus, providing opportunities to build community, pray, serve, and fellowship. If you have not yet connected with a class, look through the Victory Life brochure you received today to find the right fit for you and your family. And 2 other quick things. Make plans now to be a part of this year's annual business meeting happening Monday, April 18th at 6:30 p.m. Everyone is invited, but we ask for members to make a special effort to attend, as we'll be looking over the past year, learning about what God has in store for next year, as well as prayerfully voting for new board members. To make it possible for everyone to attend, we are offering childcare for newborns through 5th grade. Don't miss this opportunity to be a part of the life-changing ministry happening right here at Victory. And finally, a delicious way to make a difference in the lives of students this spring, the Victory Christian Academy baseball team invites you to participate in this year's barbecue fundraiser. The team is selling slow-cooked 10 to 12-pound pork shoulders for just $35 to raise money for equipment and uniforms. You can place your order before or after Sunday and Wednesday services, and your fully cooked barbecue will be ready for pickup on Saturday, April 23rd at 3 p.m. Thank you again for being a part of today's service, and remember to invite someone to be in church with you next week.
The world had been waiting for a redeemer, a hero, a king, Jesus. Born a miracle to live a life of miracles, to rescue the oppressed and heal the sick, to end oppression and conquer the enemies of darkness. Until one terrible, confusing, and chaotic Friday. While the sun was still sleeping, Jesus was arrested and accused. As the day advanced, the one who had healed 1,000 wounds was battered, torn, and left to die on the cross. This changes everything.
Well, this morning I want to start a 3-week series that's going to lead us right up to Easter. And these messages are all going to center around what I think are the 3 most important days in history, the 3 most important days since the beginning of time. And just to give you right here on the front edge of this message today and the message series, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to tell a story. And I'm going to tell the story right out of the Bible, and you can go and check it out. In fact, I hope that what we're going to talk about today and next week, and certainly on Easter Sunday, you're going to go back. Maybe it's going to be motivational to you to go back and read the Gospels and check these things out. But I really want to tell you a story, and I think over these 3 weeks, and I hope you'll be here every single weekend, I think you're going to learn more about everything that unfolded in those 3 very important days, maybe more so than you've ever heard or learned before. Let me address our online audience. It's always great to have you as well. And we know that we're going to have, and I mentioned it earlier, a lot of friends who are going to be here on Easter who maybe don't typically come to church. And so we're asking to our online church family, if you've not been able to be here during like COVID times, and you've been looking for like, when do I get re-engaged? Make it, if you want to come, and I hope you will next week, but be certain that you are here re-engaged. Now, if you got a health situation that is just, it still wouldn't be safe for you, but that is not the majority of you. That would be a very small percentage. The rest of you, I want you to be sure that you're back and re-engage with us on Easter Sunday. Today, I'm going to deal with a time that actually leads us up and is including the crucifixion. Next week, I'm going to take, this 3-day, I'm going to take Saturday. We know that, we talk about Good Friday, the time when Christ was crucified. But then Saturday was a very confusing day. It was a silent day. And it's confusing for a lot of different ways that we will get into that I won't take the time to get into today. But it's that day when Jesus is in the tomb. And then certainly 2 weeks from now, we're going to be celebrating Easter and the resurrection, the most important date in all of Christianity. But I want to jump right into a scene that is playing out. Again, today I want to talk about Friday, all right? If you know I'm talking about Friday, wave at me. This is the time leading us up to when Jesus is going to be crucified. And the scene that I take you to, and again, I'm going to tell you the story, is actually just outside the gates of Jerusalem. And just outside the gates of Jerusalem, there stands 3 crosses, and the middle cross is actually already empty. The victim has been taken down at this point, and at the top of this particular cross that I'm describing to you right now hangs a sign which reads, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Now, in doing a lot of studying leading up to this series, and certainly I won't be able to include everything or we'd be here a while, but to give you some of the things that I ran across in my studies was a great quote by a particular writer who said this, and I brought it with me today. They said, the holiest man in history, we know that to be Jesus, the holiest man in history died covered in his own blood and your sin. Our salvation, this writer says, took place on a hill where the smell alone would have driven us back into the city. We, and then I thought this was a great statement, we would have been most horrified by the moment God was most glorified. Let me say that again. We would have been most horrified by the moment that God was most glorified. So I think in your mind now, you already have this scene in your mind, these 3 crosses outside the gates of Jerusalem. But it begs the question, well, why did Jesus actually have to die? I mean, when you look at everything, I mean, he's innocent in every way. I'll come back to that. But look at all the good that Jesus was doing in the world. Everywhere he went, he was healing the sick. I was reading about that in my devotionals this week, how the crowds followed him everywhere, even when he would try to find a few moments of solitude or some like mentoring time with his own disciples. People would just see him moving in one direction, and the whole city oftentimes would empty out. And it says, and I won't mention this particular verse, well, I guess I am if I'm going to say it now, but it says that everywhere Jesus went, he went about doing good and healing all manner of disease. And that's what he did. He went around and he healed sick bodies, and he taught life-changing principles. And Jesus demonstrated with his own life what authentic love and compassion legitimately was. So how could it be? How could it be? Why did it happen that an innocent man like Jesus would be executed as an enemy of the state? And we need to talk about that. And maybe you've never really thought deeply about this before, but there was actually a law that was already taking place behind the scenes that brings us up to the place that I'm describing for us now. See, there were many challenges that existed in Rome. Lots and lots of challenges. And Rome certainly comes in play. You cannot talk about Friday, and you cannot talk about the suffering and the crucifixion of Jesus and leave Rome out of the equation, because it certainly relates to the death of Jesus. See, the attitude of Rome, and again in this story, and I hope you'll check it out in more detail on your own, but the attitude of Rome was that Jesus had to be killed. He had to be killed. Now keep in mind, for about everything that I'm telling you, there's about 10 other things that I'd like to tell you, but I'm just trying to hit the high points of our story. The Jews, they were fed up with the fact that the Romans had come and occupied their city. The attitude of Rome, as I mentioned to you, was that Jesus had to be killed because Jesus was a threat to their nation, and anyone who was a menace to Rome had to be eliminated. Now, all right, take all of that into consideration, and then let me add to the story. You see, in Jesus' day, what the Israelites genuinely wanted was a Messiah. That's what they wanted. They pinned their hopes on the coming of a Messiah. And this idea of Messiah is really, really important if you're going to understand Jesus. So we have Rome, are you with me, that has come in, and we'll talk about Pilate. I'll mention Caesar, although I will not get into detail concerning Caesar. But you have Rome, and they have come in, and they have occupied the holy city. Now, the Israelites wanted a leader who would actually lead them in a revolt against Rome. Now, is this making sense already? Because I'm hitting high points. I can't detail it out too much. But so Rome has occupied the holy city. Wave at me if you're with me to that point, all right? Rome has occupied the holy city. And the Israelites, they're fed up with it. I'll say more about that in just a moment. And what they live in hopes for, that there would be a coming Messiah, someone who would launch this charge to overthrow Rome, provide them with their freedom from the oppression that they're dealing with. All right. And so they were just hoping. So they're living, and there's this great conflict between Rome and the Israelites and the Rome. And so they're just hoping, they know that there's a promise from the Old Testament that there will be the coming of the Messiah. There was prophesied that would happen. And they long for that day. And it only made sense to them that it would be in that day when they were being so heavily oppressed by Rome that somehow the Messiah would come and that he would deliver them from all of their oppression. Now, this is important for you to know, prior to Jesus' growing popularity, there had been, I don't know if you've studied this before, but there had actually been many what we would call wannabe messiahs. Wannabe messiahs. There had been a lot of those. And I'll just mention two. There was probably as many as 18, think about that, as many as 18 wannabe messiahs in and around the time of Jesus' growing popularity, but I'll only mention two for time's sake. For example, there is Theudas. And Theudas is actually mentioned in Acts chapter 5, and I want you to look at verse 36 with me right here on the screen. And it says here in this verse, you remember that Theudas appeared some time ago. This is going back to when Jesus was crucified, around that time. And he was claiming to be somebody great. And about 400 men joined up with Theudas. But Theudas was killed, and I'll tell you how he was killed. And all of his followers were scattered. And what happened to Theudas, this wannabe Messiah? It says that his movement died out. So, in order to understand just a little bit more about Theudas, you have to go back to a historian by the name of Josephus, who gives us some insight as to just who Theudas was, how that he was actually called the Messiah. And Theudas boasted these big claims. I'll mention a couple of the claims that Theudas said. For one, Theudas claimed that he could actually part the Jordan River. How many of you know that Theudas could not part the Jordan River? But he claimed that he could. But he never did, but he claimed that he could. Theudas also claimed that he could make the walls of Jerusalem fall down, crumble. How many of you know that Theudas could not do that? And Theudas never did that, but he claimed that he could. So Theudas, again, he's a wannabe Messiah, and he has this very enthusiastic group of people that are following him because he is leading a rebellion against Rome. And how many of you know by now the Israelites want to overthrow Rome? That's why they want there to be a Messiah. We've talked about that. And so Theudas is leading a rebellion against Rome, but then he's captured. Shortly thereafter, Theudas is actually decapitated in front of a large crowd of people in Jerusalem, and the visual effect that Rome played out was very, very effective because the message that was sent out loud and clear when Theudas was publicly decapitated was this message that this is what happens if anybody tries to mess with Rome. Wave at me if you're still with me. I'm telling a story. Here's the second wannabe Messiah. I'll only mention two. It's a guy by the name of Judas the Galilean. He too is mentioned in Acts chapter 5, and let me tell you a little bit about him. He actually he founded and led a large group called the Zealots. And everything with him, he wants to chase that for a while and talk about some who are attached to that, but I'm going to resist that urge. But I would just tell you that he founded this group. He was leading this group. He got them all fired up around this idea that Israel should never pay taxes to Rome. Now, how many of you know that's going to pose a problem? So he's leading them. No. They have come and occupied the holy city, and they're, they have no business being here, and we have no business paying taxes to them. So the Zealots, very large group, Judas the Galilean convinces them to take up arms against the Romans, and that's a bad idea. He too, just like Theudas, is eventually apprehended. He is not decapitated as Theudas was, but along with about 2,000 of his followers, they are all crucified. All of them are crucified. This happens before Jesus. They're all crucified. By the way, in case you don't know this, the Romans, anytime there was a crucifixion, I mentioned to you not too long ago that Jesus was not the first person to be crucified, and he was certainly not the last. And so anytime that there would be a crucifixion, in this case, there would be quite a mass crucifixion, at least 2,000, along with Judas Galilean. Many times what the Romans would do is they would leave these crosses, long after the death of those who have been crucified, they would leave these crosses standing in Galilee to send a very strong message to anybody who may come along afterwards and get the bright idea that you should not pay taxes to Rome. On a side note, and this is really important. As a young boy growing up in the region of Galilee, which Jesus did, Jesus would have seen these crosses again and again growing up from the time he was a little boy. And early on, he realized, he knew what happens whenever you lead a revolt against Rome. And part of my preparation for this talk and the two talks that will follow, there's a writer, a scholar, his name is Alistair McGrath. I know it's McGrath. I think it's Alistair. And I think it was you, Dr. Hackett, that gave me some ideas about some of his writings. And in one of the books that I read by McGrath, in describing this time, he says, during the period, and this just helps us to further understand what's playing out here, during the period of Jesus' ministry, Palestine was occupied and administered by Rome. There was fierce nationalist feeling at the time, fueled by intense resentment at the presence of a foreign occupying power, which is Rome. And this appears to have given a new force to the traditional expectation of the coming of the Messiah. For many, listen to this now, for many, the Messiah would be the deliverer who would expel the Romans from Israel and restore the royal line of King David. It is clear, McGrath says, it is clear that Jesus refused, and you need to know this, it's so important to the story that I'm telling you today. It is clear that Jesus refused to see himself as Messiah in this sense of the term. At no point in his ministry do we find any violence against Rome suggested or condoned, nor even an implicit attack on the Roman administration. And so a lot that could be said about that. But again, that's why a lot of them are just wondering, how can Jesus be the Messiah when he is not leading us in an overthrow of Rome? So all in all, tradition, history tells us probably as many as 18 wannabe messiahs in Jesus' day. Now, pause. How many of you are with me still? As I tell this story, wave at me. Wave at me if you're still with me. Proceed on. Are you ready? Well, there's all kinds of people and groups in and around Jerusalem, and they hate the Romans. They hate them in such a way that nothing would make them happier than to not only be dispelled from the holy city, but to really virtually be annihilated. So the attitude is, again, so when will the real Messiah appear, and when will he come and lead us? Now, we're talking about Friday, right? Okay, we're talking about Friday, right? So you cannot talk about Friday and leave this guy that you've read about. Maybe you don't know a whole lot about him, but you've read about Pilate. And you can, and he didn't fly planes. It's not P-I-L-O-T, P-I-L-A-T-E. You cannot talk about Friday and leave Pilate out of the story. This is the man, he's actually a governor who functioned under Caesar. Don't have time to chase that, under the reign of Tiberius, so don't have time to chase that really. But what you need to know at this point is this is the man, the governor, who would seemingly, and I emphasize the word seemingly, who would seemingly hold Jesus' fate in his hands. Now, this is what you need to know about Pilate. Pilate is not a friend of the Jews. Don't kid yourself. Don't think that they just always collaborated, that they had this wonderful, wonderful relationship. That's why it made it easy for Jesus to be crucified on Friday, because the Jews and Pilate, they were always working together. Pilate is not a friend of the Jews. In fact, Josephus, I mentioned this historian earlier, Josephus actually writes that Pilate immediately offended the Jews by bringing what they thought were, quote, outrageous Roman standards into the holy city. And I'll give you just one example. History tells us that on an occasion, Pilate actually takes, now when I talk about Jerusalem, how many of you know the temple fits into that equation as well, right? The temple in Jerusalem. And on an occasion, what Pilate actually does, and this is just one example of many I could give you, he actually takes these golden shields that are covered with the names and images of these Roman deities placed on them, and he has them located into the sacred temple. Now, how many of you know that's going to tick the Israelites off right away? He has compromised. He has convoluted. He has contaminated the temple. Another ancient writer, not Josephus, has said concerning Pilate that his rule was marked by bribery, insults, robberies, supreme cruelty, executions without a trial whatsoever, and that he had this furious, vindictive temper. Pilate is always irritated with the Jews. Do I need to say that again? Pilate is always irritated with the Jews, and the Jews loathe Pilate. They hate him, but it's quite, and the reason I mention that, the reason I emphasize that is because what happens next is very, very interesting. So let's bring the Jewish chief priest, all right? Let's bring them into play now. After having him being Jesus, arrested by the temple guard, they bring Jesus to who of all people? Who did they bring him to? Pilate. They bring Jesus to Pilate. How many of you know, if you were listening, you know, I'm just checking you out. How many of you know that Pilate can't stand the Jews? Wave at me. How many of you know that the Jews have an even greater disdain for Pilate? I mean, he's this pagan that has infiltrated the holy city. And look at all that he has done to our most sacred temple. So it's very interesting what happens next. They bring him to Pilate. And furthermore, here's their allegation. I want you to look at Luke 23:2. They, the chief priests, they begin to state their case. They're making their case before Pilate. This man, speaking of Jesus, has been leading our people astray by telling them not to pay their taxes. Time out, time out, time out. Have you found anywhere where Jesus told them not to pay taxes? No. No. In fact, do you remember, was it Simon Peter who later said, hey, what do we do about taxes? And he said, hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go out and I want you to catch a fish. And in there, and how many, you remember that story? And he reels in a fish. Was it, you theologians, Dr. Estridge, Dr. Hackett, wasn't it Simon Peter? And he reels it in and he opens up and there's a coin. And the coin is sufficient amount of money to pay for both Simon Peter's taxes and the taxes of Jesus. And Jesus later said, when he was questioned about this, they handed him a coin and he said, whose inscription is on this coin? Oh, Caesar's. Then render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. And how many of you know? How many of you know that this charge that Jesus is inciting the people, much like Judas the Galilean, to not pay taxes to Rome? How many of you know this is a false charge? He didn't do this to the Roman government, and by claiming that he is the Messiah, a king. How many of you know that's a fallacy? That's a fallacy. He's not claiming to be a Messiah. In fact, they don't even believe that he's a Messiah, because otherwise he would have been leading this massive charge to overthrow Rome. So, what is the implication here? What is the implication of their accusation? Jesus, this is what they're trying to set up, and I'll come back to this. They're trying to set this up. This is Friday, right? We're talking about Friday, that Jesus is an enemy of Rome. Caesar, they are saying to Pilate, again, the Jews who loathe Pilate, they're saying to Pilate, Caesar would not tolerate him at all. He's going around spreading words. We shouldn't pay taxes to Rome. Jesus wasn't doing that. But they don't have any, real charges, genuine charges against an innocent man, so they have to bring some bogus charges forward. And Jesus is not doing that, but they're saying, hey, because he is doing that, Caesar would not tolerate Jesus, and you need to do something about it. Now, Pilate actually resists, if you can imagine, the chief priest. By the way, not because he is sympathetic toward Jesus necessarily, he simply felt contempt for the Jews. And this leads us to something that you've read about, and this is now going to make sense to you. Are you still with me? I'm telling a story. Are you with me on the story? So what does Pilate do? He doesn't do what they tell him to do, at least initially. Instead, he offers to them an alternative. Pilate says, oh, by the way, it's Passover time. It's Passover time. This is something the Jews had remembered since the days that they would make their exodus, their exit out of Egypt. And there would become the Passover. So now it was the Passover time. The Passover was being celebrated and still is being celebrated by many authentic Jews today. But the Passover time is here, and Pilate looks at the Jews and he says, you know what happens at Passover? This is the normal practice on Passover, during Passover time, for me to release to you at least one prisoner. So here's what I'm going to do, Pilate. And he feels contempt for them, and he knows. In fact, I started to say I'm not going to mention it, but I guess I am going to mention it when I mention it, that Pilate understands that they have this fundamental, the Jews do, a fundamental jealousy toward Jesus, right? How many of you remember that Pilate's wife actually had a dream about Jesus and warns Pilate? How many? I wasn't going to mention that, but I guess I just did. So here's something that begins to play out. Because he loathes the Jews, he said, it's Passover time, and you know the custom, what is ordinary, is that I would release one prisoner to you, and you brought me Jesus, so I'm releasing Jesus to you, and they became indignant. No, do not release Jesus. We brought him to you because we want him to be executed, his crimes. I mean, don't you remember Theudas? Don't you remember Judas the Galilean and all that they did? And they tried to lead an overthrow, and that's what this guy's trying to do. And he's telling people to, not pay taxes, and he's claiming that he's Messiah, which means that he would be a king. And you know that that's not going to sit well with Caesar. And so you've got, no, you're not going to release Jesus. Instead, we want you to release to us. And do you know who they asked for? Who did they ask for? Barabbas. Why Barabbas? Have you ever wondered that? Why Barabbas? Why Barabbas? He was a guy that was a murderer. And so part of the ploy, part of the end game that's going on here, the Jews are saying to Pilate, and again, both groups, they hate each other. They hate Pilate. Pilate hates them. And Pilate is just saying, he knows they're jealous. Hey, I'm going to release Passover. I'm going to release Jesus to you. And they're like, no. You keep Jesus. In fact, based on what he's done, he needs to be executed. And Pilate said, no, and they're saying, no, release Barabbas. And Barabbas is actually a murderer. Do you know what is playing out? I want you to track with me on this. Maybe you've never thought about it, but this is what they're thinking. If you will release to us Barabbas, this murderer, and you let him go free, guess what he's going to do? He's going to kill they're not saying this to Pilate, but this is what they're thinking. He's going to kill even more Romans than he did before. And then it begs this question, and it's going through their minds. How can Jesus be the Messiah when he will not even lift a finger against Rome? Now, the chief priests have been holding their trump card. And I don't mean that politically. They're holding you missed it, but that's okay. I'm sorry, I apologize. That stuff slips out. I asked Jesus to help me with it, and you have no idea all kind of other things I'm holding back today, and I asked my friends to pray for me, so there we go. Now, the chief priests are holding their trump card, but it's got to be played, and there's no better time than right now because it's Friday, and if they're not careful, this is going to get out of their control. So Based on that, I want you to check. This is still the conversation. I want you to check out these two verses in the same chapter. Look at this first one. This is John 19:12. Well, in just a moment, go to verse 15. Then Pilate tried to release Jesus. Remember, it's Passover time, but the Jewish leaders shouted, "If you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar." Remember what they're trying to do? Hey, listen, Pilate, you know that Caesar has jurisdiction over you. You release Jesus based on everything that he's doing, you're going to be in big trouble with Caesar. Anyone who declares himself a king is a rebel against Caesar. And Jesus has not been proclaiming that he's king. But again, it's the trump card. Look at verse 15 now. "Away with him," they yelled. "Away with him. Crucify him." "What? Crucify your king?" Pilate asked. "We have." Now think about this. How many of you know? Listen, you've been following me, haven't you? Haven't you? You didn't check out. You didn't work on your grocery list or take a nap, and I'm just waking you up, right? You know that they hate the Romans, right? The Israelites hate the Romans. Isn't this interesting? "We have no king but Caesar," the leading priest shouted back. Have they ever acknowledged the reign of Caesar? Absolutely not. But again, it's a card that they've got to play, because if they don't play it now, things could get out of control. What is it that these chief priests know about Jesus? They know that he is not a military threat to Rome. He is not. They know that Jesus did not carry within him the hate that they all had for the Romans. I think that they fully realize, I believe this with all of my heart, that they fully realized that Jesus' mission was not and never would be to overthrow Rome. Jesus never tried. He never walked away. Hey, listen, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to lead a charge and we're going to overthrow Rome. I'm tired of this Roman occupation. We need freedom from oppression. Why would we pay taxes to Rome? They've invaded the holy city. They've done all this stuff to the sacred temple. And Jesus is not set on his mission to overthrow Rome and then establish some earthly kingdom. In fact, Jesus let it be known. Do you remember this? I wish I had time to talk about it. I don't. When Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world." Man, isn't that good? My kingdom is not of this world. If you're looking for, if Messiah in your book has to be the guy who's going to overthrow Rome, chase them out of the city, it's not what I'm about. And in a way, and this is what I love as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, I love this. You could never convince me to turn my back on Jesus. You wouldn't, but nobody could, because when you think about Jesus, people get irritated with the church sometimes, and I'm talking about big church. I'm sure people probably get irritated with our church too, and sometimes people get irritated with Christians, and I get it sometimes, but I don't know how you could ever get irritated with Jesus. And in the way that Jesus lived in love, it was becoming increasingly apparent that a new kingdom was in fact breaking into the world. The kingdom of God would be one not of hate and violence, but of love and grace. It would not be a murderous rage as Barabbas. It would not be Judas the Galilean, who has taken up arms against Rome. The kingdom of God would be one of love and grace and forgiveness and salvation for all who would receive it. Some time ago, I read a book by Andy Stanley, and in that he said this, and I brought this one paragraph, and I thought this was great, so I brought it with me. It said, it wasn't just his new message that made Jesus irresistible. It wasn't just his new message, because it was different, by the way, than the message of the Jews that made Jesus irresistible. It was Jesus himself. People, listen to this is so good. I like the way Stanley says this. People who are nothing like him liked him. And Jesus liked people who are nothing like him. Jesus invited unbelieving, misbehaving, troublemaking men and women to follow him and to embrace something new. And you know what they did? They accepted his invitation. So I'm running out of time and telling my story. I only got like 5 minutes and 4 seconds. Staring me down. I see it. So the chief priests have a huge predicament. They have to somehow get the crowds to hate Jesus. And that's not going to be easy. And to get Roman Pilate to crucify him. So they have to generate 2 charges. If I had more time, I would deliberate on this more. But they have to convince Pilate, track with me on this, they have to convince Pilate that Jesus has committed treason. And if they can convince him somehow that Jesus has committed treason against Rome, then that would lead to a crucifixion. But then doubly, they have to convince the crowds that Jesus has committed blasphemy. And if Jesus had committed blasphemy, which they accused him of, which by the way he never did, then that would be reason reason for death. So shortly before Jesus stands before Pilate, he first appears before the Sanhedrin at night. You need to read about that. And I want you to look at the last two verses. All right, here's the last two verses that we have time for. The chief priest and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death. Read the rest of this sentence with me. Read it. Everybody read it. But they did not find any. Let's go ahead and keep reading. Many testified falsely against him, but their statements did not agree. So to wrap this up, who's really in charge? Who? Is Pilate in charge? No. What about the chief priest? Are they like really in charge? Really, at the end of the day, they are not. What about the Sanhedrin? Who is it that truly set in motion this horrible crucifixion of an innocent man? By the way, Timothy Keller, some of you are familiar with that name. Timothy Keller writes, on the cross, Jesus suffered a 3-hour-long death by slow suffocation and blood loss. So who set it all in motion? Who's responsible? Did Pilate hold Jesus' fate in his hands? Seemingly, but not really. What about the chief priests? They hated him. They were jealous of him. Did they hold Jesus' fate in their hands? Was it the Sanhedrin and this august body who thought that they had more power than they actually had? They had a lot of power, no doubt, but was it them? You know what you have to do? You have to actually track this all the way back to the Garden of Gethsemane. And there, kneeling before his Father in prayer, Jesus makes a decision. You cannot miss it. Wave at me if you're still with me. This is it. This is the end of the story. And Jesus makes a decision in the Garden of Gethsemane, and here it is. I will not run. I won't. I will not collaborate. I will not fight. This is what Jesus said. I will die on Friday. I'll die on Friday. Jesus knew that that was in obedience to the Father. And I want you to catch this. It's so beautiful. Man, I could talk about Jesus the rest of the day. In that moment, Jesus declares his heart for people just like you and people just like me and every other sinful person that has ever lived. Jesus said, it's not Pilate. And it's not the Sanhedrin. And it's not even the chief priests and rulers of the law. You ever remember the story where it says, and Jesus opened not his mouth? As a lamb before their shearers is silent, so Jesus opened not his mouth. Because Jesus in that moment fully understood this is not about Pilate, and it's not about the Sanhedrin, and it's not about the chief priests. It's a decision that I've made. In obedience to the Father, I will go to the cross and I'll die for the sins of the whole world. Listen, you may be a person that in times past you've got so frustrated with Christians. You're like hypocrites. Oh, I've never. Or you may have gotten heard in church a long, long time ago, and now you're just re-engaging in church, and you said you'd never go back to church, but now you've started going back to church. You may be a person that you just said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a moral improvement plan, and I'm just going to work harder and harder and harder to try to be a good person. I want to be a good mom. I want to be a good dad. I want to be a good citizen. I want to be a good employee, but you've yet to receive Jesus. I'm asking you today to give your life to the one that gave his life for you on a Friday. To just say, Jesus, here I am, and I give my life to you. If you are not a Christian and you've never prayed to receive Christ as the Savior and the leader of your life, this is your day. Or maybe you're somebody that you've drifted. You once walked with God. Maybe you grew up in church and you just got away. Maybe in your teenage years you became like a hellion, a rebellion, and you're just like, you just went your own path. And you just know over time there's been a lot of separation, not from God to you, but you from God. And today would be a day that you would rededicate your life to Christ. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Everybody stand. Everybody stand. I'm through with the story. How many of you follow the story? Wave at me like this. The story picks up next Sunday. But if you're here today and you want to receive Jesus or rededicate your life to Christ, man, I think it's the smartest decision you could ever make. And I want to lead you in a prayer. I want to lead you in a prayer before we take communion together. And I want everybody to pray it out loud with me. Janelle is going to pray it behind me. And I want you to pray it out. And you say, but Jeff, I prayed the prayer. I know you've prayed the prayer. But when you pray it out loud, it's helping people around you that haven't prayed this prayer, or people that are rededicating their life to Jesus, saying, you know what? I wanted to give my life to Jesus. I want to be done with sin. I want the Holy Spirit to live on the inside of me and to lead me and to guide me. Let me lead you in this prayer. And you pray it out loud. Are you ready? Dear Jesus, I come to you today. And I know I'm a sinner. I need Jesus in my life. I receive you, Jesus. Thank you for Friday. Thank you that you went to the cross and you died on the cross for me. I know that I've sinned. Lots of sin. And I need your forgiveness. I receive right now your grace, your mercy, your forgiveness. I'm turning from sin, and I will follow you. Jesus, thank you for all you did for me on that Friday. I receive you right now as the Savior and leader of my life. And with your help, I'll follow you the rest of my days. In Jesus' name. And everybody said, put your hands together and let's give Jesus some praise right here. I want you and I to take these moments. Janelle and the team's going to lead us in a song. We're going to do a little throwback, I understand, and that's great. And they're going to lead us in a song. And I want you to use this time. The ushers are going to distribute the buckets. And I want you to take out that little cup. It's got the wafer. It's got the juice in there. And it represents Christ's body and his blood. And they're going to start passing that out to you even right now. You guys can do that. And some point during this song, maybe you just need to confess some sin. Maybe you just want to worship. Maybe you just want to reflect. Maybe you want to walk in your mind briefly through the story of what took place on that Friday. Jesus carrying his cross through the crowded streets up to Golgotha, the place of the skull, and him being nailed and crucified, and he did it all for you, and you're just remembering. That's what communion is, remembrance of what Jesus did for us. And then at some point, we're not all going to take it together. Sometimes we do that, but at some point during this song, you take the elements and you remember and be grateful for what Jesus did for you. And then at the conclusion of the song, Janelle will dismiss us. I love you, everybody. Have a great, great week. Don't leave. Let's sing. Let's take communion. I'll see you next Sunday.
And what can wash away my sins? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. What can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. We sing, oh, precious is the flow, and that makes me white as snow. No other heart I know. out, say it. The power of sin is broken. Jesus overcame it all. And he has won our, say he has won our freedom. Jesus has won it all. Come on, let's shout it out all together.